Hello and welcome to Hypertrophy Odyssey chapter 321, 321. It is the last day of the week, aka the Big Bang Attack workout. I am feeling pretty good right now. Very excited for this workout. But anyways, to the main subject matter for today. The roles reversed is not a good argument to make with someone. Now, this is kind of gonna go in two different ways. I might make this a two-parter, probably not, but this episode is gonna basically deal with the entire idea that whenever somebody says, "Oh, think of it as if the roles were reversed," is an argument we would like to be good for something, but unfortunately isn't a good argument for a lot of different reasons. And I think this comes up because there have been a lot of instances in recent time where people will say this as a argumentation against something, and they are correct. That's the thing. But because of the standards that both sides attain to are completely different, unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily work. You can see this a lot with, the older teacher having their way with a student. There's that. And it's very different when it comes to either side of the things, of course. But at the same time, they're technically not, of course, looking at the law. But there is a certain understanding, of course, between the differences in gender and how that plays it out, of course. And there are differences to this type of stuff. And I think that using the argumentation of, imagine if the roles were reversed, would work if we were all right in the head and society actually functioned the way it does. They're supposed to. But unfortunately, it doesn't. And I think that people need to understand that part. And I'll get into that and the entire idea of the double standard and the way that nothing is really created equally. So thus, it's like a weird argumentation against it in the sense that I wouldn't say it's almost good, but it's more so we have different experiences in life that kind of make it so it's not possible. So we'll get into a bunch of details and cover some of those topics. And I'm not going to argue whether what happens itself is good or bad, because realistically it is bad, regardless of whether you think of it or not. Objectively, it's not good. But the argumentation to say, think of it as the other side, to try to convince somebody else about it doesn't work very well. So with that being said, I will see you at Mother Base.
All right, so started this day with single arm lat pull down, which was pretty good. But anyways, back to the main subject matter here. The roles reversed is not a good argument. So before I continue, because I want to reiterate this again, everything that I'm saying is not necessarily good, okay? People, whenever they do a evil, it's still evil. Regardless of what I say here, whatever I'm talking about is in the evil category. This is not to absolve these people. They are doing a terrible thing. I'm not trying to defend that. It's just a interesting perspective to look at. I think for me personally, the biggest thing about it is that roles reversed, or just saying, like, imagine if the roles were reversed as an argument for certain things, just isn't as powerful of an argument as people would imagine. Of course, there are certain things that it would make sense, Just generally speaking, this would technically make sense. That's the issue that I always find with it, is that yes, you are correct. If the roles are reversed in this scenario, it's still evil, or it's still bad, or it's just worse. It's just as bad. But the issue I find with it is the fact that we usually are seeing it from a different perspective, in the sense that we aren't equal. And I think that a lot of people end up losing that. They want to believe we are equal, but we're not. The way in which the world goes through the lens of a woman and or man is very different, even when you're young. I think that most people can understand this concept, and I understand why people would say that we should all be treated equally, but we're not. Our worlds are completely different. The way that we go through things, how we think through things, is completely different. So this is why when I see this argumentation, for example, I think the one that I see it the most is like when a older teacher, specifically a woman, targets a younger man. And I think obviously this isn't a good thing. Of course, this isn't a good thing. This person deserves to go to jail because obviously, like I said, if the roles were reversed, it would be instant jail time, and everybody would see that guy as a creep. But looking at it from the first perspective that I get put as, most of the time, if you are this kid, you're not seeing this as the other side of it. You're not seeing it as the grooming that it is. Because I think a lot of dudes inherently kind of understand oh, hey, the older lady's into me. Let's see how this goes. Now, of course, they're wrong, and this is a wrong perspective to have, but it's different. And I don't think that people really want to get that concept through, that we are different between men and women and our experiences. They are not shared. We cannot just flip the gender role in order for that to be the argumentation that says it's bad. It's already inherently bad. That's the main thing. But this argument line doesn't make sense because we aren't the same. And I think that that's the biggest issue I have with it, is because people will try to pretend we have this weird equilibrium of being the same shared experiences. Now, of course, there are very similar experiences that we could all kind of go through, but at the same time, it's just not the same. And we could see this even in other aspects of the world, really, where you just see the tables trying to be flipped, but realistically it doesn't work. It's just not the same. I feel like a lot of people end up losing that a lot of the time. They end up wanting to make it so there's an ideal behind it, but it doesn't really exist. The unfortunate reality of it is that because of the fact that it is not a level playing field, that we are not the same, that we are not equal, that the argumentation for doing something like reversing the roles or having the other thing, like the shoe on the other foot, things like that, doesn't work, is because we're just different. It's just how it is. Just even looking at it from a male perspective, of course, there are things that are inherently bad, but the perspective, even from an outside world looking inward, from a woman being raped by a man versus a man being raped by a woman, is very different. It's a very different thing. Now, of course, it should be treated the same, of course, but it's not. And that's the thing. I would like to just reiterate that it's bad, but because we have different worldviews, we will always look down upon something like that for the man, and we will try to help the woman as much as humanly possible. No matter what we try to do, we can always look at it like that. Like, it's never going to be the same. And I think that I'm tired of trying to make it the same. I think we have to establish the fact that they're different, but we have to handle it the same. That's the thing. Like, for example, it's the false accusation type of thing. If a man has a false accusation for something like rape, the woman can go scot-free. There's no real consequence. On the other side, the man will get ridiculed and denied even if it is true. It's kind of like, damn. And it sucks, but it's like a standard we must bring up to both sides, so that way it's fair. I think for me personally, it really just doesn't work as an argument because we are not equal. And I am very much tired of people trying to equate men and women or shared experiences like that, because they're not. Unfortunately, as much as we would like to think that they are, they're not. And of course, this just means that we should probably enforce the law equally. But even then, that's something that won't happen, even in these types of scenarios. For example, the woman who is a predator who happens to be a teacher in this case that I said earlier might get like a few years in jail. If it's the other side, the man's going to jail for life, basically. So it's definitely a difference of how the gender is seen through the lens of not only the court systems, the societal view of these people. So it is different. And that's why I always find it dumb for people to make this type or style of argument, because no matter how hard we would try and how we should actually try to normalize the consequences of these things and equalize them, we will never really be able to, because of the differences in our perspectives and how men and women are just different. And anybody who says that they're not different, well, you got a lot of things to learn.
And we're back. Welcome to the workout debriefing. Exercises not filmed, none. Exercises skipped, also none. Got everything in, thankfully. Back to the main subject matter for today, which is if the roles were reversed, it's a poor argument. The reason why I wanted to say it's a poor argument is because I want to reiterate before we even get into it. I'm not saying that the things that this is a technically logical sense, that it makes total sense why people say this, because in theory the thing should be bad regardless, right? And I think that that is true, that rings true, and I'm not absolving anybody from any wrongdoing. I think the entire point of this is the idea that basically that when people are entrenched in certain mindsets, they are not willing to leave it. So it doesn't necessarily matter the argumentation that you make against the person. Once they are there, they're not leaving, even if logically you are correct. People are just are very stubborn in their own ways, especially when it comes to certain things like this, because the perspectives kind of change things. Of course, there are differences. There are obviously differences between each thing depending on what the thing is. It's just that people who argue against it and try to do that line of thinking, although valiant and actually honorable, it's kind of useless in the sense that no one new is going to be like, you're right, they shouldn't have done that. Maybe somebody who's younger, who maybe may not know anything, but realistically, once you're past the age of like 20, if you haven't really learned anything about that, or even had that thought about the roles reversed already, no one else mentioning it is going to change your mind about it. And I think that that's an issue, I guess, but also realistically, that's the main reason why I never really would like to use it as an argumentation for anything anyways. I understand why people do it, and technically it makes sense, but people don't make sense. They are, in better words, retarded. And it's hard to explain that to people. I feel like that is the hardest part in order to dumb things down. And that is a way of dumbing things down, but it dumbs them down into a point where they don't understand it. It's kind of like that SpongeBob meme of Patrick with the wallet. I'm going to insert it right here. It's the same thing where you can say everything that logically makes sense, but for some reason there's that little disconnect that happens with people, and then it's impossible. So it kind of makes the point null and void, as well as perspective on things. Obviously, that kind of does play a factor to it, but that one is a little bit more of a person's actual moral code and everything like that, because that's, well, depending on the person, really. So that is something, although there are some establishments between good and bad, and I think we can all agree on some of those things, but we'll get that's for good and evil. But anyways, I think that this is just one of those things that when I see it online, I just kind of go like, and that's it. That's just like, because there's no real, nothing else. You have added nothing to this conversation, really. You have said what is quintessentially the obvious. So thank you for your discourse. I appreciate it. Next. But it's just my personal opinion about it. But tell me yours in the comment section down below. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions about this one. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this video with anybody who may or may not like it. I will be back on tomorrow with a new video. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Please share this video with anybody who may or may not like it. I really do appreciate it. Please leave your comment section down below. I would love to know your thoughts and opinions about this, or if you've used this argumentation with people and it's actually stuck. Would like to know. But please, thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Keep it heavy, stay safe out there, and stay cool. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.